Awesome, awesome. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you guys for tuning in. Welcome to today's in session. My name is Kristen. We're going to be focusing on radio play 101 for the independent artist. So we're super, super excited. We're going to break down the barriers, dispel any of the myths, and just talk strategy around radio play and how to use non-commercial radio to impact your career as an independent artist. So I'm joined by an amazing panel of industry professionals, artists who are going to give some deep insight into this topic. So without further ado, I'm going to be joined by Aaron Bird, Abby Mccarthy, and Jay Jin. And let's start with you, Jay. If you could give us your preferred gender pronouns and a bit about yourself, and then we'll go Abby and Aaron.
My name is Jay Jin, he, him, and I'm an artist from Baltimore, Maryland, and just really excited to be a part of this and give a perspective, but also learn from Abby and Aaron and take on hopefully some great questions from the crowd. And thank you, Kristen, for having me again.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thank you for joining. Abby, yep.
Oh, am I next? Okay.
No worries.
My name is Abby McCarthy. She/her are my pronouns. I'm a TV and radio presenter, so I am a massive new music obsessive. I bring the best new music to people via BBC Introducing, which is an amazing platform for new artists in the BBC. I also cover shows on Radio 1, and I interview artists as well on 4Music. And run a gig night as well, which is called Good Karma Club, which is a monthly gig night. Remember gigs when they were allowed? Yeah, they were good, weren't they? So I did that monthly and also did a tour around the UK as well with that. And I'm also an A&R as well at Insanity Records, which is part of Sony. And yeah, so happy to be here today.
Grateful to have you, Abby. Aaron?
Yeah, I'm Aaron Bird. I am a DJ at a radio station called KCRW here in Los Angeles. Been there for a little over 13 years now. I've also been an event producer here in LA for over 10 years. I actually started producing an event, I feel like around the same time Sofar may have started. And my event in Sofar was often compared to one another. I kept mine really small and intimate and private, and Sofar has left me in the dust. But it's known in LA, and it is called the Bird Series. And as Abby alluded to, it's sort of on an indefinite pause at the moment for obvious reasons. In addition to hosting a radio show, I'm also a music supervisor. Probably best known for supervising Ava DuVernay's Netflix miniseries When They See Us last year. And yeah, excited to be here, see what people want to know. And hopefully I can offer some advice and level of expertise, and anxious to learn from both Abby and Jay as well.
Amazing, amazing. Never left in the dust. Everybody has space. So grateful for that and for your contributions. So what a beautiful and a powerhouse panel. I know everybody's excited and I'm excited too. I have to keep my composure. But just a bit before we dive in, we've received a lot of input from the attendees on the questions and content. So thank you for everybody who submitted. We're going to be covering all the topics related to radio and the indie artist for the first 45 minutes. And then the last 15 minutes will be Q&A. So we're going to kind of get into how to submit your questions for that right now. So housekeeping items to cover before we dive in. This is a supportive and uplifting space. So just keep in mind that is the type of space we are cultivating here when we get into the discussion. And then for the chat, feel free to drop in. You guys have already started in the chat letting us know where you're tuning in from. But you can also use the chat to, show your support, to show your connection to anything that we're discussing. But make sure that you have your chat function set to all panelists and attendees so that everyone's able to see what you're typing. And then for the Q&A, if you guys have any questions that pop up during the discussion, there is a little section at the bottom for Q&A. You can type in your question, and then we have a moderator who's going to help gather all those questions, and we're going to get into it at the last 15 minutes of the session. And also at the end of the webinar, you will receive a short survey just to let us know any other topics that you want to hear, any other topics that you want us to bring forth, and just how we can do better, how we can, continue to keep this thing going. So without further ado, all the housekeeping items are covered. We've been introed. We're going to dive right in. So we're going to start with you, Abby. Can you just tell us a bit about or define commercial and non-commercial radio for us and talk a bit about the differences between the two?
So commercial radio, a lot of the revenue comes from adverts, whereas the BBC isn't commercial. It's kind of public service broadcasting. So we're quite lucky we don't run on adverts, but that sort of means we have quite a lot of responsibility, because we're there to serve the needs of the public. We're there to educate and inform, and to bring the best new British music to our listeners. Commercial radio is an amazing thing though, and often if you're on commercial radio and you're on their playlist, that's when your music's really become a hit and is really shifting numbers. Whereas I think sometimes at specialist radio and on the BBC, we can champion artists earlier and afford to kind of take those risks, and just see how the music reacts, which is why I think I've always really enjoyed being a part of the BBC or being part of specialist radio, because you can play stuff for the very first time and just see how it feels, and give artists that really unique experience of being played on national radio for the first time. So that's kind of the main differences really is kind of how it's funded, and a lot of the time I think it's the style as well. In the UK, commercial, I mean, obviously it might be different. You guys might be going, Abby, what's she talking about, in a little while. But in the UK, commercial radio is generally quite a different style. The presenter links have to be quite sort of short and sharp, whereas outside of that, presenters get to flex a little bit. We get to mess around, and like I said before, we really get much more of an input on the music. So yeah, kind of different styles, and different in the way that it's funded is probably the easiest way to lay it out.
Yeah, I love that. Super straightforward. Aaron, do you, in your experience, are there any benefits or drawbacks for independent artists on any particular style? I've heard a few from what you described, Abby, but in general, do you think that there are any specific drawbacks or benefits for artists for specific types of radio?
Yeah, I think Abby spoke to it. I don't know how it is in other countries, but I would say generally commercial radio in the US, it feels like it's the same rotation of, 6 to 8 songs all day, every day. So if you don't fit in this particular, I would say generally under the umbrella of pop, of which hip hop can be a part of, rock can be a part of. If you don't fit in a particular sort of well-polished sound and style, it's really hard to break through, where we have a tremendous amount of liberty and autonomy in the public, independent, non-commercial radio world to sort of play whatever.
I love that. Kind of holding the key to helping people break into that realm versus trying to compete with the 6 to 8 songs that play all day long.
Yeah, and I would also say, I'm not sure if we're going to cover this at some point in time, but a lot of public stations, and I'll speak quite confidently because I'm familiar with the history and tradition of KCRW here stateside, often serves as kind of a feeder to commercial radio stations. It's almost sort of like the testing ground of what people may have an appetite for, and or quite often some of those artists that for whatever reason, sonically, aesthetically, don't seem to fit the quote unquote commercial model. Maybe their style, maybe their composition, something about what they present musically can influence some of the ones that are already in that pop music world. That happens a lot as well. And at KCRW, for instance, we have quite a few music supervisors. So there are a lot of placements in film and television for major films and television that are consumed and seen probably on a scale of like 10 to 20 times larger than the terrestrial radio audience. So in that sense and in that way, it can often lead to some type of pop success.
I love that insight. And it's definitely something that I don't think a lot of artists know. It's almost like this linear trajectory where like you have to go straight to that source without knowing the ins and outs of what things connect to the bigger picture of it all. And I think that kind of like draws really nicely into like, are there specific like people that artists should be considering when they're trying to get their music played on radio? I know you talked about music supervisors and things like that, that you may not know who to reach out to. Do you have like any people in general that artists should kind of make a list of those people to kind of reach out to when they're starting on this journey?
I imagine you don't mean specific names, just like maybe
Not specific names. We don't want to bombard anybody, but titles, kind of general.
I don't want anybody coming after me. Yeah, as you might imagine, I get this question very often, and I just think the general rule of thumb, which honestly can be applied to all of life, is cast as big of a net as possible, and don't create any barriers to entry. One thing, I've been in radio for over 13 years now, and it still happens where an artist will send and one of us an email, and they'll have a streaming link to their music. I guess, and I suppose for most people that seems satisfactory, but for any artists that are out there, we do not play streams in DJ sets. We cannot, like, it's a waste of time. Or you'll get an email that says, hey, I was wondering if I could send you my music. Well, send me your music. Why are you sending me an email to see if you can send me your music? Just like, so send downloads. Getting back to your question a bit more specifically, if you imagine, or you imagine your music and or just have the desire to be on some television series, for instance, that you really enjoy, you like, see who that music supervisor is, see if you can get in contact with them, and start sending them music. I would say I would approach it from a place and perspective, as I'd like to describe, as like a subtle persistence. We get bombarded with stuff all the time. It's no exaggeration when I say that I get anywhere from, I would say, probably 40 to 50 emails of music every day. And that's just not one song or one album all the time either. So just know that we are pretty overwhelmed. Then I would also say, I know for myself and a lot of my fellow KCRW DJs, we still do quite a bit of digging in a traditional sense that DJs do, where it isn't as much the physical digging where you go to a record store. It's a lot of digital digging. So there's quite a few blogs, whether it's Pitchfork or Ear Milk or Inside Basement Soul. There's quite a few blogs that we use as great trusted resources. See who are some of those people who are writing up those pieces. Reach out to them, like cast as big of a net as possible.
I love that. Thank you for that. And I think it's very interesting that now in this digital age where a lot of people are connecting virtually, that one-to-one connection, trying to go straight to the source, it may not be your best connection. Like you were saying, Aaron, and even like you were saying, Abby, like, create a great product and then go straight to, okay, who are the people that are talking about this particular type of music? And then the DJs or the presenters that want to play this type of music may go to this source to find, and then they have another person that's vouching for this music versus just the artist vouching for their own music, kind of thing. So that is a huge nugget. So definitely thank you for that. And I think that what are some of the kind of misconceptions that stop artists from from going on this musical journey. Jay, can you speak a bit on that? Like, what are artists' fears, and if we can kind of dismantle some of that?
I'll be honest. I'll start from kind of this mindset that I've taken, which is slow and steady wins the race. I think yeah, this is now my 6th year of doing this as an independent, unsigned artist on purpose. And when it comes to radio play, I'd say I can count on 2 hands the times that my music has been played on radio here in the U.S. But it's primarily been done through shows. So like Pat Monahan of Train, he had he basically, and this was complete randomness, but he had like found one of my songs from my first album, and he was like, oh my gosh, you have to hear this. So he played it on his Sirius XM, talked about it. And then there's been a couple radio shows in Baltimore, Maryland, where they'll have like a neo soul station, and so they'll play this, play that. And I've kind of gone back and forth through the years. I've done a little bit of the whole reaching out, hitting up different folks, and at some point you kind of realize, like, I obviously have not been played on the major radio stations yet, but I'm just kind of taking this mindset of just, like you said, create with excellence and know that that will kind of pick up. And it's interesting too, because overseas, I have 3 full-length albums out, and the first I was very lucky to get that distributed through Sony Korea in 2016, and that was amazing because they did this like one-off thing through a person that I knew. And so then it's a little weird though. In Korea they have this like blanket license side thing, so the music just gets played, and it's been in over like 30 Korean dramas, TV shows, and all this stuff. But in the US, it didn't really kind of pop off in that way, because even with a celebrity or somebody that says you have to listen to this, we're in this day and age where people are inundated with so much music, and that becomes really hard, because even for me, I've tried to do the whole thing, reaching out to people like Aaron. I haven't reached out to Aaron yet, but people like that, and just being like, hey, look, give this a listen. Here's the link to download it. Here's this. I'll mail you something, and you put in all the details and do all that. But you understand that like they're probably getting millions of these messages. So I've kind of taken this like reactive approach, proactive in the sense of just continuing to create art, working on this 4th album, all that. And slowly, I think the numbers that I'm crunching every day is just seeing the trend from Spotify, Apple, and all that. And I'm now, after 6 years of doing almost 600 shows, it's almost like, wow, you got your monthly listenership into the 6 digits now, right? So and I'm hoping that with that, slowly, with enough people hearing, they'll eventually, maybe I'll get lucky and get a song played, or somebody will be like, man, we got to play this, we got to let somebody hear. So again, it's relational for me. I think it's just been meeting people and doing events like this, and just at some point there's just so many artists out there, so much music, so you have to just stay on that grind and just create with excellence.
I love that and totally agree. And it kind of goes right into that question of like, okay, with everything that everyone's putting out, during COVID, when everyone's at home, shelling out all of these amazing like projects. Abby, what do you look for? Like, how do artists break through the noise of the mountains and mountains of emails I'm sure you have to sift through? What do you look for when you're like, okay, yes, I'm going to play this, or like, oh my gosh, this person has to be seen? Like, what do you look for?
That is literally like the $1 million question, isn't it? How do you stand out? Because now more than ever, people can make music in their bedroom and upload it onto DSPs, and people could be streaming it the next day, or they could send it to a radio station and it gets played that night. Like, we're in a very like reactive, industry. I think Jay made a really good point though, because I think sometimes people pin all their hopes on getting, a play on BBC Introducing or KCRW, and it doesn't always happen straight away. So always continue to go on your journey, make really great music, be putting on shows that blow people's minds and people can't wait to go back to, be making really cool music videos, so that there's so much buzz and there's so much talk about you that you do cut above this noise and you are the kind of new essential artist. I think a lot of the time people can get distracted with social media and numbers and things like that. But I think when you're starting out, don't worry too much about that. I'm not saying have rubbish social media with, terrible photos and, word art logos, but always concentrate on the music, because making amazing music is always what's gonna make me and Aaron stand up and be like, of course we want to play this on the radio. And then when you get big, we want to take the credit. That's what we do as radio presenters, So if as long as you're concentrating on making really great music, putting on the best possible live show that you can, and really like making a name for yourself in your local scene, first of all, and then the rest of the world can kind of follow suit. But for me, things that make people stand out, apart from great live shows and amazing music, is people that are doing things differently, whether that's like the way they release their music, is it like a slightly different spin on a genre, is it something different and interesting lyrically, are they collaborating with people that you maybe didn't expect them to. I think any way that you can stand out is always a good thing. But yeah, I think sometimes people get distracted with all the different things that you can be doing. Never forget that your art is your product and is what's going to make people stand up and listen. I have this thing that great music will always be heard. Everybody here remembers when they heard their favorite band for the first time. How excited were you when you heard that song and you text your friend like, right, we're going to see this band when they're in town, or you need to check out this tune. That's such a special feeling. So pour everything you can into the music and your identity, and making it kind of as authentic and brilliant as it can possibly be would be my main advice.
Amazing. I love that advice. Aaron, do you have anything to add to what stands out for you? I'm sure that it's, you guys are humans. I feel like sometimes people forget that like the same human things that cause everybody to react are similar in, when you hear a great song, everybody who hears a great song feels something. But in general, everybody wants to get into the brains of, of those that are listening. Anything to add to what Abby was saying?
No, I mean, I think what Abby said was pretty on point. I don't care what year you're talking about. When you hear a phenomenal voice on a track, it's always going to stand out.
Mm-hmm.
If there is an excellent arrangement, composition, it's well put together, produced, mixed, engineered, that always really stands out. When she mentioned having something different, I think that's really key. But it's also one of those things that is, it can be very difficult to define as well, because something different can be something that we are all accustomed to, which is a great voice. But there are people, not everyone has an excellent, amazing voice that just kind of stops you in your tracks either, right? But the thing that comes to mind is, I'm pretty sure I was the first DJ, at least stateside, I don't know about in Australia, to play a band called Hiatus Coyote.
Love them. Yeah.
Yeah, and they have they're just really they have interesting time signatures. They just present and bring something different to the table.
Mm-hmm.
And I love Nay's voice. She's not a Whitney Houston necessarily, but the combination of Nay's voice with the different style of arrangements, the encompassing the jazz with a little bit of the boom bap of hip hop, it was it was just a really right combination. I don't think that there's any definitive playbook to prescribe to anyone. And if there was, then there'd be a lot more people. We wouldn't need this panel, right? So as a lot of what I have to say is just piggybacking and agreeing with Abby, is staying true and genuine to what you believe to be right. Because one thing that I've certainly noticed, and maybe Abby can speak to this as well, it's been quite interesting being in the form and medium of radio. I don't know if any of you have ever met or know someone or know of a story of someone who's been born with all of their senses and then subsequently lost one. They all talk about how their other senses are enhanced. Well, if you think about radio, you typically don't have the visual component and sense available to you. So you're able to hear, whether or not you're very conscious, you're able to hear sometimes, like when people are presenting, if they're being genuine, if they're smiling, if they're laughing. Well, you can also hear that and feel that, I would say probably more specifically, with a song that you're hearing and you're listening to. That there's this small, like little nuance minutia that comes across that you probably, none of us can really quite define, but we all know what I'm referring to and I'm talking to. And it comes clear when people are listening to your music. So really staying true and genuine to that, I think is if there's anything to prescribe that there, where there's a uniform thread across who breaks in, who doesn't, that would be it. Just staying really true to yourself and to your art, and people resonate to that.
I love that. Yeah, and I think that it's so interesting that like all of you have kind of honed into that, like although we all want this like how to guide one, you know, step one, step two, step three, the main underlying importance is being who you are and continuing to create great music, a great product from an authentic place. And that authenticity will then connect to the fans, it'll connect to everybody who you want to hear it, but focusing on, you know, trying to get it to these people isn't necessarily the best route. You gotta also create something that people want to connect to. So that's definitely like a huge thing to keep in mind and forefront of mind.
I feel like, just to jump in really quickly,
Yeah,
more
definitely.
than ever, just because we're in, you know, a social media age, people are always, you know, on Instagram and sharing things on their stories. People feel like they know artists more than ever. They've got, you know, even more of a window into their lives. So that you have to be authentic. You have to be yourself, because you're kind of going to get found out eventually if you're not. So I think, always make music that you genuinely believe in and you think is going to stand the test of time, because I think sometimes artists are following a certain trend or a certain fashion, but music's all over the place. We have no idea what's going to be big even in 2 months time. There might be a new genre of music that, you know, crashes open the doors of radio and we all become obsessed with. So always, stay on your path and stay true to who you are. I can't like say that enough. Like authenticity is just key, isn't it?
I love that. And I think it's so interesting, like you bring up a good point around how things have shifted and people are interacting with artists, with music, with social media, everything in a different way. Do you find that fans are interacting with radio differently, or are there any shifts in how people are looking to radio, or what they're looking to radio for, and how artists can kind of align their strategy with those shifts?
Well, that's a really good question. I did something recently where Billie Eilish released the James Bond song, which obviously now everyone kind of knows and loves. And I played it on Radio 1 for the first time, and we did like a listening party where we dedicated an hour of the show to playing it. And it felt like such a moment because all the listeners were hearing it for the first time with me. So it's like, it's amazing because I think radio has always been a really powerful medium because it really connects people. But I think moments like that where you're premiering something or you're having a discussion, fans feel so linked to the presenter, but also obviously to the artist that they're supporting. And I think radio is having to sort of shift a little bit to kind of keep up with the modern times. But I think there's some beautiful moments in radio where you can connect people's favorite artists to them directly as much as possible. And I think I'm trying to, as much as possible, ask the questions that I think the fans would absolutely want to know. And I often like jump on Twitter before and I'm like, what do you want to know before this interview? Because I think radio is amazing in giving fans access to artists. And I think where possible, it's making radio as relevant and as exciting as it's ever been, really.
Love that. Yeah. That connection is going across the board, like no area of lives and people's kind of wherever people are, wherever your orbit is, like connection is a huge thing, especially now that people are connecting a bit more at home, more like engaged in things that they didn't really have time to pay that much attention to. So yeah, I love that. And I guess when you think about fostering that connection, is there a way that radio and artists can connect and collaborate more community, kind of collaborate on just expanding your connection to others? So it's not such a linear, like I put my song on the radio or a radio presenter puts my song on there and then they hear it. Like, how can we use radio and artistry to kind of connect more of a community?
Aaron, do you want to take this one?
Oh, give me the easy one, huh? Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, without having a clearly articulated answer, my gut tells me yes, for sure there is. Whether or not I have the answer for that is another question. Um, huh. I, I'm trying to rethink the question again. It's like how can artists and artistry use radio to create and facilitate more of a community? Is that it essentially?
Yeah, definitely. And even, radio itself, like even the presenters and DJs, like creating that almost, so not to guide your answers at all, but how you all also have something outside of your radio shows where you kind of pull in artists that you're aware of, that you've played on your shows, that you've encountered, and that then translates into your live shows and the gigs that you do and the bookings that you have, like kind of creating an ecosystem and a community that extends beyond just radio.
Yeah, that's what I was sort of thinking about in terms of, I'm sure Abby can relate to this, like putting on events with some of the artists. And then obviously as well, because the film and television industry is so huge, having some of those artists, if you're, in particular, if you're a music supervisor or you have a connection with music supervisors or some of these library houses that music supervisors use, and those placements are put on some of these television series or films that are viewed by the hundreds of millions of people, so that's a way to create and facilitate, I guess, a larger community. With, I mean, KCRW is quite unique, I would say, in the sense that we have this long tradition. And I guess to before I get into greater detail, just to contextualize it. So, we were the first station to play Fela Kuti, Radiohead. I'm trying to think who else. I think like Coldplay domestically in the U.S. We broke Little Dragon, Anderson .Paak. Adele made her first radio appearance at KCRW. So our audience typically knows and understands that we recognize the wave before it crests. So that's also sort of part of this I would say general narrative. So how this connects to that question is when we present a show, even if people don't know who the artist is, they can imagine, oh, this could be the next Anderson .Paak, this could be the next Adele, this could be the next whomever. So that's a way that it sort of expands directly outside of the specific medium of radio. I hope that all made sense.
Yeah, that made total sense. And, it does indirectly build this community and this expectation of like, I don't know them, but I know I'm going to want to know them kind of thing, which is huge. Like you build a community without having to reach out directly to specific people. It's like, if I know you're under this umbrella, or if I know that this person from this umbrella is talking about you, then I'm going to kind of go with it and go for that. So totally.
Yeah, if an artist is like co-signed by BBC One or, BBC Six or Triple J or KCRW, then people know it's like, oh, they've had the history and have developed a reputation and a cachet that they're a trusted brand,
Amazing. I'm going to take a quick pause. So we are almost wrapping up our discussion. So if you guys have any questions based on what we've been discussing, please drop it into the Q&A and we'll do like a lightning round trying to answer as many questions as we can. Just wanted to give you a heads up to get your questions in because we'll be moving toward that section really, really soon. But before we head there, so we've discussed a bit about making sure you have a quality product, making sure that you don't bombard people when you're trying to build these relationships. But specifically, are there any like definite don'ts or definite do's when it comes to trying to cultivate these relationships with people as you're trying to break your music into radio. Like we all know that we want to start building relationships, but that very first intro, like Aaron, you're like, don't send me an email asking me, can you send me your music? Just send me your music. But a lot of artists are like, I don't want to just assume, you know. So like, what are some do's and don'ts as people kind of build their strategy that you can kind of lend their way?
I have a few things because I get these emails all the time. Yeah, again, I think just approaching or just maintaining the perspective of casting as wide of a net as possible and don't create any barriers to entry. So the example that you just alluded to that I mentioned earlier, sending an email asking if I would be interested in listening or checking out their music. Well, I may not get to that email for like a week or two after you initially sent it. So if that's the case and you're waiting to hear a response from me, it may be another week or two until I actually get to your music. And at this point, a month has passed from this initial email. Always, 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 at least for the US, I think this is probably the case in many other countries as well, is send a clean edit of your music. Do not send something we cannot play on the radio. And I think it is helpful to send a stream, but don't send a stream exclusively. Send a stream and a download. I would also say only send music that we're able to play on the radio. Again, we're being bombarded with stuff. So unless you have a tight relationship with this DJ already, and even then this may not work out in your favor, we have way too much music to get through to sort of have all these sort of kind of subcategories and buckets of like, oh, I can't play this for like another 2 weeks or something like that. Send it to me when it's ready to play, because again, you don't know when I'm going to open it up and when I may have the ability to drop it in a set. So those are some of the things that I would mention. Oh, and also in particular, I would say if you're a hip hop artist, I would encourage this with any artist, but I would say in particular with the hip hop artists, always send instrumentals if you can as well. We often need music beds to talk over. And so even if there's a song that you have with lyrics on it, you made that song with the intention of people listening to the one with lyrics on it. However, the person you send it to may not like your voice, may not like what you're saying for one reason or another, but they may really like the production. And if it's being played, even if the DJ is talking over it, you can then move forward saying, oh, I've been played on BBC, I've been played on KCRW. Again, cast as wide of a net as possible and don't create any barriers to entry.
I feel like I just want to repeat everything Aaron said, but I think we all feel it as radio presenters. The amount of times, I've gone on and the streaming link or the download link doesn't actually work. So then it's just like, never ever send something by WeTransfer, because by the time I've got to it, it almost definitely will have expired. It's about making that email as simple as possible. I want to open it and be like, right, okay, it's an indie band or it's a rapper. They're from this place. Here's the song. I'm going to click on the song and I'm either going to like it and then read more, or I'm not going to like it and I'm going to move on to the next email. We get sent so much. So the amount of times people have sent me their life story, and it's like, I'd love to say I had the time to read every word, but I don't. So short and snappy is, absolutely the way forward, just with the, with the key facts. Also, while we're saying cast, the net as wide as possible, also don't waste your own time by sending it to the wrong presenter or the wrong kind of show. I'm sure KCRW has got genre focus shows, just like we do at the BBC. If I'm covering the indie show on Radio 1, I don't need you to send me a bubblegum pop tune. However good it might be, I'm not going to be able to play it. So it's just about making sure that you are reaching out to the right people. And I know a couple of people in the chat were saying, who do you send it to specifically at radio? So it's radio presenters that you love, shows that you like listening to because you love the style of music they play. Try and also hunt out the producers of those shows, who's working behind the scenes and will be able to feed, the music to the presenter. They're the kind of people that you need to be hitting up. But yeah, make sure it's the right person. Also, if you can, and you are genuinely a fan of that show, write a little line about it. You know, I loved that session on your show the other week or whatever. I think that person
Flattery always works.
Flattery always works. We're all a sucker for it. You know, if people want to drop me a compliment, I'll lap it up, you know, and I think that personal touch works, doesn't it? I think the amount of blanket emails I get sent, it's just like, hi, full stop, life story. And I'm just like, oh, you know, on to the next one. So I think there's a few different things you can do just to make things as simple as possible and to make yourself stand out.
Amazing. I love that. Thank you. And you also hit, I'm sorry, go ahead, Aaron.
No, I was just about to say, I mean, I would push back a little on what Abby said in terms of maybe not sending a pop song to someone who on their show may not necessarily play that type of music. Because as a music supervisor, we get all types of gigs and we have all types of different requirements. And some of the things that we are asked to source may not be the things that you hear on our radio show. So there are things that I get and I receive that I don't feel it's in the vibe of the story I'm trying to tell with my radio program, but they fit with this television show that I'm working on, or for this commercial that I'm working on. So I would still really encourage people to cast as wide of a net as possible, because you never know.
Yeah, I suppose that's a good point. Like, I think it's making sure your intention is clear in the email, though, isn't it? So I have people from all different genres being like, I'd love to play your gig night, Good Karma Club. This is my song. And I'm like, okay, I get that. Whereas, yeah, if I'm covering a show that's very tailored to one genre and they're emailing me for airplay, it kind of gets a little bit lost, doesn't it? So yeah, I think it's kind of making clear your intention, even if it's like, hey Aaron, not sure this one fits your show, but no, you're working on loads of cool stuff, you know, what do you make my mixtape? You're going to be like, cool, I'll definitely check it out.
Awesome. And Jay, I just wanted to say, I know we've been talking a lot about specifics on getting onto someone's radio show, or like getting your music played on someone's radio show, but you have your fireside chat, which isn't music focused, but could you tell us a bit about the fireside chat, and then the importance of artists also creating their own lanes and creating their own opportunities with their own kind of shows and ways to connect, void of going through someone?
Absolutely. So going back just kind of to this conversation, obviously, I think there are a lot of artists that are curating content, whether it's through TikTok, all this thing, and we talked about social media. I've kind of taken this like opposite approach by realizing that it's really about the story. You know, a lot of times people will support you because of why you're doing it. And so even for my first album, when I crowdfunded it, raised nearly $20,000 from 98% of the people who had never heard a single song of mine. It was because of the story, you know, like, or, you know, I won't get into my story, but really there has to be this why of why you're creating. And then in turn, what I've found is rather than being, you know, having this beautifully laid out Instagram, like what I try to do is cultivate opportunities to show. And again, we talked about authenticity. It's so hard in this day and age. And so I've started kind of this fireside series, similar to like a Joe Rogan podcast with video and all that. And it's a private event where I bring in guests, but also get the opportunity to really share the personality, right? Share the perspectives. And what's really interesting is that a lot of people that have slowly started to kind of listen to this will go back and be like, oh, we listen to your music because we like kind of the mindset that you have, or the conversations that you have, or even things as simple as just approaching things with humility, approaching other individuals with humility. And so there's these human side of the dimension of music that kind of others can get behind, can support you in that. And so that also translates in, you know, I know like from the music side, I'm, you know, a songwriter, and that's going to be my biggest thing. I want there to be the lyrics. And I almost joked too, like earlier, I think Aaron had mentioned something about, you know, good music will be heard. And I always, from day one, I was like, you know, most likely people will discover my music after I'm gone. But that's why I wanted to create in a way that it's timeless, rather than saying, oh, Billie Eilish is big now, let me go follow and do what she's doing. Instead, when I create an album, and all the genres, I got everything from country music to neo soul to funk to everything. And so what I want to do is make it so that it's timeless. Like when you listen to it now, it's good. 10 years later, it's good. 30 years down the road, it's going to be good. And that's kind of where even the production side, you have to do that. So leaning into the firesides, leaning into the people that are supporting you, I think it's very important to make it not just only about music. You know, obviously make sure the music is good, but sometimes I'll go in and do Insta Lives and just take, you know, requests. And even if I don't know the song, I'll be like, give me, you know, 20 seconds to listen to it on Spotify, and then I'll play it. I'll make up my own version. And those kind of things have been very popular because people are like, oh, there's a human side, and I'm just blatantly sometimes messing up the lyrics, messing up the song, but making it my own. And in that, there's been some really beautiful growth in that. So yeah, that's just my perspective, I think.
Amazing. I love that.
I just want to add, I saw somebody asking about like an MP3 or metadata. Abby and I didn't say this, but I know she would agree, is like, yeah, make sure that the metadata is correct, because we, in all likelihood, don't know who you are or what your stage name is or what your song is, or, you know, if you send something with the working title, then that's what's going to be credited as opposed to what the actual final title is. And again, in terms of, you know, MP3 or I always prefer to have high res files, but I would say probably send both. In particular, because with radio, there's so much compression that an MP3 would be fine. But high res for us sort of like, you know, audio files, in particular, if you're spinning a song out at a club or a particular party or something like that, the average person probably doesn't hear the difference, but us DJs and those with the refined ears definitely can. And so if there's a choice or an option between something sort of low quality or low res versus high res, you're gonna gravitate towards the one that has high res. So instead of asking, should I send an MP3 or a wave? Again, don't create any barriers of entry. Send both.
That's it.
Amazing. And that was like a perfect transition into our lightning round of Q&A. So thank you to everybody who has submitted their questions through our Q&A chat. We're going to just go straight from the top and answer as many questions as we can in as much time as we have left. We kind of hit on this a bit, but we have a question from Molly that says, what is the best way to look for music supervisors and connect and send music to them? So we've kind of hit a bit on that topic, but the best way to look for them, perhaps?
Well, I mean, they're credited as part of the production. So the same way you see a show or a film is directed by the composer, etc., there's a title for the music supervisor. So you'll find that at the end of every show, series, film. So you just look for who that person is. Most people nowadays have some sort of presence online. So you can find them on Facebook or Instagram or something along those lines. It's nowhere near as difficult as it once was. But
Awesome.
that's usually how you find them. You know, they're in the end credits. Yeah.
And then besides music supervisors, are there any other job titles that artists should look for? And this question is from Chase Daw.
I would say music editors. Music editors are the unsung heroes when it comes to placements in film and television. They're almost always artists themselves, because you have to have a real understanding of music theory and composition. Because when you think about it, I think people take it for granted, especially if they aren't in that world of post-production work when it comes to music placement. It's rare that a song is designed specifically for the placement you find it in film or television. So a music editor is the one that works with the editor of the episode, the director, the showrunner, and the music supervisor to say, okay, when the door closes, we want that to coincide with the downbeat type of deal. And before the music supervisor really gets involved, the music editor is often the one, sometimes it's the editor of the episode. So I would say music editor and editor of the episodes, they're putting temp songs in. And so if they may have an idea of like, oh, I think this would feel good, or maybe they had some sort of direction from the showrunner or the director. And so they are pulling and resourcing from songs that they know. So that's before the music supervisor gets involved. That may end up being the final song used, or it may spark something else in the music supervisor. So the editor of the episode, The music editor are other, I would say, titles that are probably good ones to seek out of people to reach out to.
Awesome. Abby, any for radio?
Radio producer, assistant producer, radio presenter. Oh, like Aaron was saying, everyone's online now, aren't they? So it's like quite easy to search keywords. You know, broadcaster, presenter, curator, producer, as I've mentioned, assistant producer, A&R, promoter. I think it's about reaching as many people as you can in the music industry with your music. You know, going back to casting the net as wide as possible. So yeah, follow these people on Twitter, because you know, often like we'll be doing events like this, which you might benefit from, or maybe, you know, I'm putting on a gig night and you want to send me your music to be considered. I think it's just good to follow as many people in the music industry as you can, so that when opportunities do come up, you can be like, hey, that one, you know, I'll take that one.
Amazing. I have a question here from Elizabeth, and it's mostly for Abby. This is what she says. That is mostly for you, Abby. What are your thoughts on the recent research around gender disparity in music? Researchers found that female artists are extremely underrepresented on UK radio, with British female artists the least represented across all radio stations. Do you know if BBC plans to take any steps to change this?
I really hope so, because it was actually really disheartening, to be honest, to see the research and see that so few female or non-binary musicians were being played on the radio. But I do know that the BBC is making a conscious effort to play more female artists. BBC introducing obviously the platform that I'm involved in. We're collecting 50-50 data, so looking at, you know, the gender split in every single show, and it's improving in every single month, which is so promising to see. But I think it's like a wider problem, in that because, you know, festivals aren't putting females as headliners and some radio stations aren't playing enough females, the younger generation coming through aren't seeing themselves represented, so don't think that they can reach these heights in the music industry, so are actually dropping off. They're going to music college and killing it, but they're not having the confidence to keep going. But I'm so hopeful that change is coming. And for me, I absolutely adore an amazing female voice on a record. And I'm just hoping that there are loads more talented individuals coming through that yeah, I'm going to get to play. So yeah, I think change is coming.
Amazing. I have a question here from Lindsay. When you play a radio or an artist on the radio for the first time, do they get notified, or how do they get notified if a track is played?
Is that for me or for both of us?
It's for anyone. Yeah, either.
The way it works at BBC Introducing, because you upload to a portal, the BBC Introducing uploader, as soon as your track goes out on a show, you get a little notification by email letting yourself know that you've been played. Sometimes when I play songs like on Radio 1, though, our national station, you sometimes don't find out until it's on, or unless my producers found time to email you to let you know, or, you know, I've tagged you in a tweet on Twitter or whatever, which I guess makes it quite exciting, because sometimes you don't know until it's happened.
Is it similar, Aaron, here as well?
No, that sounds like a cool function that BBC has.
It really does.
Yeah, I don't believe we have anything set up like that. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's what I can say definitively, because I'm struggling to think about instances in which I've like notified an artist that I'm playing their song that's a sign to me that it hasn't happened that often. But what I have had happen, in fact, I woke up to a message today for this. There's an artist named E.J. Warland that I really dig. He's an Australian singer-songwriter. And he has an amazing song called, I think it's called Drown Into You or Drown You, something like that. And he just sent me a DM this morning. He said, hey, my friend just said that he heard you play my song. So it happens like that often. I'm trying to think of the name of that band. I can't think of the name of them now, but I played someone when I was hosting on the morning show a couple of weeks ago. I played an act, and their manager reached out to me because they all of a sudden saw the Shazam numbers just like, you know, shoot up all of a sudden in the LA area. And so they was able to do some research and saw that I played them that morning. Yeah, so I've never actually really asked how people find out, except if, they were listening themselves, or a friend or someone they know that they're connected to was listening. I think sometimes what happens is people will Google their name or a song title, and then they'll see that it showed up in one of our DJ's playlists. Yeah.
So, Abby, clearly every radio station needs to repeat what what you all are doing over there, because artists are just like, you could be in rotation right now. You just wouldn't know unless you're Googling yourself or other people are listening. So,
My surprise though, I guess, is that
so funny. We have a question from Rita. How do you take advantage of being in rotation, having your song in rotation and keeping up that momentum, because your song won't be played in rotation like forever? Jay, do you want to take this? How do you keep that momentum going when your song is being played? What do you do next?
Oh man, I think it's just to keep, I guess, like if it does show up on something, then you can kind of spearhead that. And obviously, I always just, obviously express gratitude to the people that have been supporting you, to the people that play it. And then beyond that, you can kind of, I guess, like use it, turn around and use that and say, hey, look, this guy, was really grateful that he played this. Would you consider playing this? It seems like you guys have similar listenership and all that stuff. And then, but it's a drop in the bucket, right? Because even, I know folks that, they'll get on a Spotify playlist and they think like their career is going to blow up, but then 1 week later, the monthly listeners are right back down, right? So we live in a really hard age where that's, you literally have to try different things on top of obviously the grind of continuing to push out music. I'm just kind of like try to be creative, just change things up, and obviously once content is created, just reach out. And I think those successes have just come from random times, and following up and bombarding people with content, but do it in a classy way, because obviously you don't want to annoy people. Yeah.
Totally love that. So keep doing your music. I mean, we just keep coming back to that same thing. Like, keep doing what you're doing. If something's happening over here and they bring you, if your song is being played on the radio, that'll then just bring more people to what you're already doing. So that momentum should already be going, regardless of if you're being playlisted, if you're on a radio station or not. So you're the one that keeps the momentum going in general, regardless of what's going on. So totally great advice. We have time for one more question. We have a question from Suzanne that is, I'm having some difficulty finding the appropriate DJs to reach out to. We do a smaller genre, world music. Google does not show many options. How do you suggest finding the appropriate DJs, I guess, for niche kind of niche genres?
Oh, I'm trying to think. We have a presenter on the BBC who I'm a massive fan of. He presents on Six Music, called Giles Peterson, who plays quite a lot of world music and jazz music, and he's the guy. I think sometimes it's finding one person, isn't it? And then suddenly you realise the whole network that he's working with. There's Worldwide FM as well that he's kind of associated with. So they would be good starting points. And then I think if you go onto their Twitter channels, you'll probably find loads of other DJs that are also rolling in that world, and find people that you can send your music to. I hope, anyway.
Amazing. Aaron, you looked like you had something you wanted to add. I could just be reading your face wrong.
Yeah, I'm not, I did. Well, I was just curious. It was just a curious question. I'm wondering what they're using Google for in terms of trying to find DJs exactly. I've never heard of anybody doing that. But yeah, this sort of relates to something Abby mentioned a bit earlier in terms of maybe perhaps being a bit more intentional with who you're reaching out to. So if you want to reach out to a radio DJ, well, maybe check out their show a few times to see if your music is something that they might play. And if they aren't, in all likelihood, they aren't the only DJ at that station. So check out others. And if you feel like their programming would welcome and incorporate whatever you have to bring and present, then that's how you would find that appropriate DJ. I could be wrong, but I would probably stay away from trying to Google DJs. I wouldn't even know what you would try to search for. But yeah, I mean, if you're trying to be played on radio, then check out those DJs on that radio station.
Amazing.
I was
I'm
going to
sorry.
say, really quickly, I think we're in a world now and a space where people aren't as guided by genre. Well, I'm definitely not. A lot of the shows that I present on the radio, if it's good, it's on. It's kind of as simple as that. And I'm sure it's the same for Aaron, you know. So one minute I might be playing quite a left field world music track. The next minute it will be, you know, some grime straight out of London. If I like it, that's just how it goes. So don't also, you know, pigeonhole yourself in a way into this niche genre when actually there's probably loads of presenters that would really appreciate the music you're making and be happy to give it a platform too. That's important to remember.
Yeah, and also, as I mentioned earlier, it's some of these DJs may also be music supervisors. So even if you don't hear what you think they only like or listen to, again, you aren't giving that person enough credit as to maybe what they do in the industry as a whole. It might not just be those 2 hours you hear them on the radio. And then I'm trying to think of other radio stations. I know this just because I'm in the industry, in the field. It's like, yeah, you're going to find DJs that play world music on BBC or Triple J or oh, I can't think of the one in Paris now. I mean, our station is known to be eclectic. So every DJ in some form of fashion plays world music at my radio station. So I don't think it's quite as difficult. I would imagine the reason why it's been difficult is because you're trying to Google this. I have no idea how you would find that using Google, to be honest.
Perfect. Awesome. I'm going to do one more bonus question. I know we're already at 2:00, but I want to do one super quick bonus question. Is it worth paying? And this question is from Patrick. Is it worth paying for directories that give you contacts for programmers, hosts, supervisors, etc.? Or is it worth kind of having a specific pot of money to sort of pay for these things? Or should you just go listen to the radio? What are your suggestions?
That's a good question. A directory, so they would basically give you the presenter and producer emails, would they? Okay, because I think I would say no. I think a lot of it you can work out and you can find out just from researching online. A lot of like BBC producers, for example, have their BBC email in their Twitter bio. So that's that. You literally just send them your tune and you know, jobs are good. And I would say if you were gaining a bit of momentum, you'd had your songs played quite a bit on radio, but you maybe had an EP coming or an album, or you wanted to do a live session, or, you know, that kind of extra tier of promotion, that's when I would suggest investing money into a radio plugger, where basically they go into radio stations and they pitch your music for you. They'll be like, you know, this rapper that I'm looking after, he's got a support tour with this person and his EP's really good and it's been produced by this person. And it's just an extra person, you know, kind of pitching in your music. And often there's obviously a lot of pluggers that I work with on a regular basis, and they build up a bit of a reputation. There are certain pluggers who will email me as soon as I see a release from them drop into my inbox. I'm like, you know what, I reckon that's probably going to be good. And I kind of lend my ears to it a little bit more immediately. So if you were going to pay money for something, radio plug is the way to go rather than these directories, because I'm not actually sure, to be honest, how kind of up to date they are and how much they can really offer you.
Amazing. I love that. Thank you so much. All right, so we have come to the close of this amazing in session. I appreciate you all. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Abby. Thank you, Jay, for your insight and for your gifting us your time. Stay tuned for the next in session, which will be in 2 weeks. Check out, we will have this video available on our website as well, sofarsounds.com, for anyone who wants to rewatch, take more notes, or wants to send it to someone who missed it. Please feel free to share this. We will also send an email to everyone to stay connected. Thank you again for your time, Abby, Jay, Aaron. I really appreciate you and all of your insight and answering all the questions. Thank you guys for attending. You all are amazing.
Thank you.
Great meeting you, Abby and Jay.
Good to meet you guys.
Yeah, and you. Thanks,
Awesome.
everybody.
Thank you. So we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Have a great one.